This is PlayStation Plus or Minus for February 2018, and today we are once again dedicating an entire video to one game, Rime, simply because it's the most interesting of the games this month. And by the way, the other two games you can get on PS4 are Grand Kingdom and Knack, both of which I'll be covering next week. So if you're interested, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss next week's episode. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's talk about Rime. So, much like Abzu and Journey before it, Rime is another quiet exploration game with shiny objects to collect, a mostly silent protagonist, and backstory told by magical shimmering murals. Rime is different in a few key ways though. For one, instead of playing as Kitty Carpet Boy or a swimmy robot boy, in Rime you play as Anime Toga Boy. So already we've got a more relatable avatar, so that's nice. And where Abzu and Journey were almost entirely about exploration, Rime places a bit more emphasis on puzzles, though I'll get into specifics with the puzzles in a bit. Credit where credit is due, Rime is a good-looking game. It's not perfect, small frame rate dips were pretty common, and more severe performance issues were rare, but did happen all the same. Performance issues aside, Rime is very appealing to look at, which is good because the story is told almost entirely visually. This visual storytelling, though, is not exactly what I'd call successful. Without completely spoiling everything, the main idea behind the game is that there are 5 main stages, of which the island is only the first, each representing one of the 5 stages of grief. How the hell anyone is supposed to figure that out, I don't know, but it leads to a game that feels very disjointed. The various murals in Part 1 lead you to believe that this might be a story of a lost prince, rediscovering his kingdom, or reuniting with his father. Maybe that's the mysterious hooded figure. And there's also a magical fox that's, I guess, destined to lead the way for young Toga Boy. But by Part 2, The Desert, the lore and story were starting to get pretty muddled, and by Part 3, I was completely lost, both in a story sense and in the game world. See, Rime, for all its beautiful vistas and attempted visual storytelling, it often fails at one of the most important visual aspects of a game, guiding the player. Like I said before, this game owes a lot of its ideas to Journey, but the emphasis on puzzles fundamentally changes how the player experiences the world in a way that I really don't think works. Let me explain what I mean. When someone plays Journey, what's their motivation? What's keeping them playing the game? I'm sure it's slightly different for everyone, but for me, I wanted to see what was on the top of that mountain. I wanted to help my anonymous player friend get there too. I wanted to explore and experience the game's world. Journey, in its very first moments, sets the mountain as a clear goal for the entire game, and my motivation to go there was because I wanted to go there. Rime is different, and there's a concrete reason why it's different. The puzzles. In Rime, I wanted to get to the next puzzle. The story, the visuals, the world, everything else became secondary because there's puzzles. I want to solve the puzzles. Stop making me run from place to place without giving me any sort of direction. There's puzzles I want to solve. And yet I found myself waiting for the game to start. Rime would introduce a neat puzzle idea, teach me the basics, and then that's it. It never went anywhere with its puzzles. Even when I made it to the big tower after only like an hour and a half, I was like, alright, now this is where things are gonna get good, and then it just kept doing that. New puzzle idea, neat. Let's see what cool and challenging puzzles there are using this mechanic, and it's gone. There's a game somewhere in here. I can see the broken down ruins of it all over the place. Where's the rest, Rime? You're hiding it underneath this story and lore that's really not as interesting as you think it is. And it just goes on and on and on and fucking on. After almost 2 hours of play, I looked up a guide only to find that I was barely a third of the way through the game. The world was no longer an interesting place to explore. It had become a barrier between me and the actual gameplay. Now, I know what you're thinking here. Isn't this exactly what Shadow of the Colossus is? Exploration to get to puzzles? Well, yeah, you're kind of right. But here's the difference. Shadow of the Colossus, actually has good puzzles. The puzzles in Rime are incredibly shallow. Some of them I solved within 30 seconds of entering the room. Most of them are just hand-holdy to the point of them practically just telling you the answer. And as soon as any hint of depth starts to show in a new puzzle mechanic, the game swiftly discards that mechanic, never to be seen again. Shadow of the Colossus also gave you some sense of where to go during exploration, both from the sword beam and the design of the environment, and Rime does neither of these. Each area looks pretty much exactly the same top to bottom, and subtle signposts are more or less limited to telling you what ledges are climbable, which isn't always helpful. Journey avoided most of these problems by 1. Keeping its gameplay and story focused and working symbiotically, and 2. Not dragging on and on and on. Journey is 2, maybe 3 hours long. Rime drags on to a frankly ludicrous 7 hours. Way too long for me to put up with exploration this boring, platforming this constrained and simplistic, and puzzles this mind-numbingly easy. Rime makes several mistakes, but I think these conflicting designs and the goals of the game are its worst. The makings of some great puzzles are here, but exploration for its own sake doesn't mesh well with goal-oriented puzzle design, since the puzzles are much more immediately interesting and the exploration feels like something that's just getting in the way of solving puzzles. The visuals and music are nice, but the story is convoluted and honestly a little pretentious. Put all this together with 2 gameplay styles that mix about as well as chocolate and ketchup, and, well, you've got a minus. At free or regular price of $30, I do not recommend Rime. Save your money and hard drive space for Knack, baby! Ooh, it's Knack! Knack, you bitches! We're reviewing Knack next week! Let's go! Knack, Game of the Year every year! Knack, baby! Ooh!